You're listening to the Cantina Cast. Your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 427, our character spotlight for Leia Organa as she appears in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. Yes, we're still talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi because there's still a lot to discuss, and it would be unfair for us to do character spotlights, dissections on characters such as Darth Vader and Reva when we didn't reach out and kind of do one for the Princess of Alderaan. So this is pretty exciting. I think we've got some really good content here. Really kind of want to get in her head and really just kind of rave about the character and the actress that played her. And speaking about raving actresses, Jonesy's here with us tonight. Jonesy, hi, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How about you, sir?
I'm doing very good. We got thunderstorms, so I'm going to apologize in advance for anybody that may pick up the rumble. It's not my stomach. It's actually the weather rolling in. So. But yeah, doing good.
It's been nice to have rain actually lately.
Yeah.
Needed it so bad. We get relief from this 104-degree heat all the time.
It's been ridiculous out here. If you're from Texas, you know exactly what we're talking about. So, yeehaw.
Yep.
All right, so before we get into this,
yeah,
let's get into some news and some exciting things happening here.
Yeah, why don't you let everyone know what we're actually up to tomorrow?
Okay, I'll do that. So tomorrow we have we've been kind of talking about this, teasing it. We said we had something kind of working. And we're going to actually do our very first, I wouldn't say very first interview, but we are going to start dipping our toes in interviews. Let's just kind of call it that. We've had a lot of opportunities to do so. Traditionally, it's never been really kind of part of the show format. And so we rebranded the Cantina After Dark logo, moniker, and that's what we're going to use for these interview type episodes. So our first one will be tomorrow. We're recording that tomorrow midday, and it's going to be with Adam Christopher, the New York Times bestseller. It's kind of funny they get to say that now.
That's cool to be able to say that, yeah.
Yeah, New York Times bestseller Adam Christopher, who is, of course, the writer of Shadow of the Sith, the book that we have yet to discuss, but that is coming as well. But we had a chance to meet up with him at Star Wars Celebration and had a good time talking with him, and we talked about it then and said, hey, let's get you on the show. We just kind of were waiting, giving our readers and listeners enough time to kind of get through the book before we do that. So that will be a full spoiler episode. We've got a lot of questions in there. We're going to do a little fun game that we'll start doing with all of our guests who come on as part of Cantina After Dark as well. So we're excited about that. So we'll record it tomorrow. Probably won't get released to the general release until sometime later in the week next week. But Patreon members, as soon as we get this thing cut, it'll be out there available to you. Again, warning now and warning when we get to the episode. It's going to be full of spoilers, and we've not discussed the book just yet, so a bit of word of a caution if you guys decide to listen to it. But pretty excited about that.
I was trolling you just now with my Goldsboro edition.
Which still has not come in for me. Like, I'm telling you. Like,
Hey, you got Brotherhood.
I got Brotherhood. But that was like, 2 months.
Right.
So that was
a gorgeous
great.
book. It's a gorgeous book.
Screen, right,
yeah, it's a gorgeous book.
Look at that. Wow. And then it's got the cover on it, the jacket with the red pages as well.
And then he signed it in red too, which was a nice touch.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, and numbered it.
What number did you get?
309.
309. All right. One day, one of us is going to get Order 66 if we keep ordering these books.
Maybe so. Will we run out of space first? Probably. Yeah. But that is the Goldsboro edition, which is one of those international only type orders. So you pay a little bit extra, but I think it's worth it. And you got to wait a little bit longer because it doesn't actually release until weeks after the main title is already released, right? So, but totally. This one was pretty quick though, like overall, because he went and signed it right around the release date.
Yeah.
And they turned that around within just a couple of weeks. And even shipping, at least for me, went relatively smoothly. So overall, pretty pleasant experience for my first time.
Still waiting here. No, I've had bad. I mean, I love those guys, Goldsboro. I think they do a really good bang up job with their books. But I don't know what it is about my address, but I just never get them in time. Like it is months and weeks. That
they have a thing against Austin, I guess.
Yeah, it was the what was the other one? The Ronin book.
Yeah,
That one took, again, it was like 2 months after the book released before it came in. It was just no longer even really relevant. I mean, it's a gorgeous book it had the gray sprayed sheets on it.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. They've got something against me, I guess. This is
Who
cool.
knows? I mean, these smaller, the overseas shops, they're subject to so many different things that are outside of their control. Who knows what it is? I'm sure it's not something that they're doing intentionally. So no shade on them.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of people in our chat so far have already read the book. So that's gonna bode well. So hopefully you guys will get to tune into that.
That's awesome. Again, it's kind of essential reading for really the sequel trilogy to make sense of it. There's so much good stuff in the past too, but for the sequel trilogy, it really, it's essential now. Yeah,
but it's gonna be a good interview, and we've got Jonesy and I have worked quite a bit on the questions, and if you've had a chance to listen to some of the other interviews that he's done with other shows and that sort of thing, I promise you we have new questions and things that have not been asked that I think are relevant, will be interesting to our listeners. So really excited about doing that show tomorrow with Adam. So
yep, super exciting.
All right.
A few other things. So it's Emmy season, and so there's 5 nods out there for Star Wars. There's 4 for Book of Boba Fett, and then 1 for Visions as well. So Book of Boba Fett's got Outstanding Fantasy Sci-Fi Costumes for Stranger in a Strange Land, Outstanding Sound Editing for Comedy or Drama Series for 1 hour, for From the Desert Comes a Stranger. No surprise there. That's when Cad Bane shows up. Outstanding Special Visual Effects for a season or a movie. And then Outstanding Stunt Coordination for a drama series, limited or anthology series or movie for stunt coordinator J.J. Doshnow. And then Vision got 1 for Outstanding Short Form Animated Program for The Duel.
Very cool.
Yeah, so it's nice that Star Wars is getting recognized still, even though maybe the disappointment a little bit with Book of Boba Fett, but it's still getting, nods in these kind of technical and editing, and again the costume and everything is a nice touch. Again, those things are staples with Star Wars. We kind of take them for granted, but it's nice that they still get appreciated.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I just wish Star Wars would win more, but I guess do better. I don't know what to say, but it seems like a lot of times they still get the snub, and some of that is the legacy of George Lucas and him kind of giving the middle finger to Hollywood many times in the past, and they still have never let that go. But it's Disney now; it's a new era. So,
and things are so competitive. There's so many big budget things out there. There's so many great films that get made every year. Right?
Yeah,
it's an award and it's exclusive for a reason. But doesn't mean that it breaks our heart a little bit when we don't win.
Right, we've got to win.
That's right.
It's all about winning, man.
That's right. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball, and you can win.
There you go.
All right. So what were you up to in the last day or so?
Nothing really. No, I'm kidding. I had the opportunity to be on Coffee with Kenobi last night. So we recorded an episode on the women of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and so I thought it was a Satine episode, and I was surprised when no, I'm kidding. I've done that joke like 3 times, and it's never landed really well. But no, it's on the women of the Kenobi series. So
I'm glad we've kept the streak alive.
Yeah, it's like crickets, man. But no, it was an episode where it was myself, Dan, of course, and then Jay Krebs from Podcast Stardust, and the 3 of us just kind of talking about the women of the Kenobi series. So we got into talk about Tala and Reva, of course, Leia, who we'll be talking about tonight. And a couple other surprises. I even threw a shout out to Christina Ariel for her cameo role. It was all about 20 seconds, to be honest. Right. But yeah, it was really fun to kind of.
It's important to strut. You got to strut the right way.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and that episode has already been released. So it can release this morning. So if you guys are interested, you guys can swing out there. Please support, obviously, Coffee with Kenobi and Podcast Stardust, which is really cool. Jay and her co-host do a really amazing job of doing that, and follow her cosplay. She does a lot of Ahsoka Tano. That's what she's. I wouldn't say she's known for. She's known for the podcast as well, but she's got one of those like perfected like costumes, top to bottom, and she gets a lot of pictures. They were both out at Celebration, and if you go out and follow her on Instagram, there's a ton of stuff out there where you can see her work and some of the cosplay stuff that she does. So fun episode.
Awesome.
And quick. Like we were done like in 45 minutes, and I thought
it probably felt like I know. What'd you do with the rest of your night?
I told him I was like, Jonesy and I go for like 2 hours, 2.5 hours. I said I don't know what to do with myself now.
Dan and they were probably like, we're in bed by then. Yeah.
Right. Like he edited the show, got it out, did all the promo stuff, and then went to bed. And yeah, that just doesn't happen with ours. So
wow.
Yeah.
we're doing something wrong.
No, we're not.
Or we're doing everything right.
Because we've got more Patreon people that have signed up and used.
Oh, we have. You're right. Mr. Alex Green and Doc Schlower have both signed up at the Green Milk tier in the last week. So thank you guys so much for supporting the show. I know Doc is over in Discord with us as well. So you have access to a new channel. I don't know if Alex is over there or not. I can't remember, but thank you guys so much. And then, of course, special thanks to our continued, now part of the tribe members, Mike, Kathy, Rob, Lauren, Dante, and Risk. Cole Bayless is out there with us. And then, of course, Delusions of Grandeur, the Grandpappy of them all, Rod. Thank you so much for your continued support. We've had such an amazing, humbling run with Patreon in June and even so far in July. And, just a special thank you to everybody who's both just a listener and anybody that's supported the show for, however long, whether you're new or you've been around for a while. It really does mean a lot to us. And we're looking to put those things into good use and how we can continue enhancing the show in different ways. So hoping to roll some things out here in the future.
Yeah. And to anybody who, even if you sponsored the show for a month, right, for $1, that's thank you. Right. I mean, that's just, we couldn't ask for more. So continue to support.
Sometimes those are fun because it's just like a little tip of the cap type of thing.
Yeah.
It's like, we see you.
It's a tip
and we see you too. Yeah. So, it's super humbling that you guys want to help support the show. So we hope to make you proud and hope to bring some more things to you guys in the future.
And let's see what else we got. I think that might be the last bit of business that we have to discuss. Yeah.
Where can you sign up for Patreon? You might ask Albert.
Oh, you might ask Albert. Will Albert know? I don't know.
Albert even has a little banner that pops up when he doesn't know the answer. It's ktdcast.com/Patreon. And again, for anything that's going on with the podcast, all of our back episodes, both Patreon and free, we've started doing a preview of the Patreon as well. So you can get a flavor if it's something you're interested in. That was a really cool idea. We kind of stole from Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
In the Screen with Ryan Showers. But yeah, ktdcast.com/Patreon.
There you go. And I did put up my little banner. And I did know the answer to that one.
I know you
get
did.
me with the other ones, though. It's like, shop or store and.
Well, the good news is I set them all up so they all work. So no matter which one you say, they all work.
All right. There you go. So I can't
redirects for the win.
Yes. Thank you for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's get into our main episode and let's talk about the little spark of hope that is known as Leia Organa. And I thought we could maybe just kind of initially start this conversation by talking about, again, expectations, right? We both went into this episode and kind of suspected that she potentially could be somebody that would pull Kenobi off of Tatooine, make him suspend his mission of protecting the Chosen One. And if not, it had to be a pretty substantial mission of whatever it was going to be. And when we first got Leia in that very first episode, I thought, okay, well, we got that right. That's cool. However, I guess what I was not expecting was, the depth in which we got her character. They could have easily sidelined her, and they could have easily put her as just this, MacGuffin of sorts where, we all know what her story is going to be like, and we weren't really anticipating, we didn't think anything more than that. And what we ended up getting was not only a further development of her character on a lot of different layers, but then we found, which was kind of the sweet spot, is that she actually was pivotal for Obi-Wan Kenobi's character development, right? At the end of it, you could argue that it was through Leia that he was able to find himself again, was able to reconnect with the Force in a way that he had not prior to, because of course Qui-Gon Jinn showed up there at the very end.
Well, and Obi-Wan himself, I think, made that pretty clear that that's what he thinks.
Yeah, right. Especially, and we get that really, and we'll talk about the speech here again at the very end in that last episode where he's calling out all the traits that he sees in her that came from Padme and Anakin Skywalker. But I guess just her overall impact on the story and as a character, and I guess your expectations going into the show.
I think when we talked about it, yeah, we viewed it as a way that she could be involved, that she could pull him out, that she could do something, right? I think, but to be honest, I thought it would be pretty limited. Maybe a couple episodes, 3 episodes.
Yeah.
Maybe she was in and out if she was going to drag on. But I thought for sure that mission would have just been to get him out of his hobby hole, whatever you want to call it. And then he would be chased. He'd get her back safe. That would end. And then it would be this kind of chase type of thing where he kept getting cornered or going from place to place. Mm-hmm. I'm really glad that was wrong with that presumption or that assumption. Because
Yeah.
I think that the way that we got it meant so much more, like you had said, when it comes to what Obi-Wan had to do to move and move to this next phase of his life and to get over the guilt of the past. I mean, I know there was some stuff with Anakin too, but you're right. I think Leia was the pivotal character for him to see what was possible, both today, but also what was possible for the future and how he might contribute to some of that too, even within his own, upbringing of Luke. So she was really instrumental. And then the fact that they wrote her character so well, I mean, that's the other thing that's always concerning is, are you able to write a child's character very, in a way that keeps them interesting? It doesn't seem like they're pulling down the story to where you're in those scenes and you start to believe that, oh gosh, okay, when do we get the next scene when she's not there, right?
Right.
So it was really nice that wasn't it. You wanted to see how she contributed to the scene, and some of those scenes were really, really intense, like the ones with Reva, and then some were really, really, heartwarming and heartfelt, and a little bit of anger too in there with how she reacted to Obi-Wan. So she beyond all my expectations exceeded them. It was fantastic, and Vivian Leia Blair did a fantastic job.
Oh yeah, I mean that girl's got, she's another Bobby Brown, and as far as I'm concerned, did I say her name right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I she's got that same. When I saw Stranger Things that first season, and of course I hadn't seen her in anything else, I thought, wow, she's got some really good moments here. And like all kid actors, with very few exceptions, they have weak parts, and they have
Sure.
stronger parts and not as strong parts. But you can always kind of tell like the ones that are really going to be good. And I would throw somebody up there like Leonardo DiCaprio when he was really young. You could see that in his eyes. Tom Cruise is another one. But they just have those moments of brilliance, those moments where you can tell they're operating at a different intellectual level when it comes to understanding the material and conveying the message and conveying the feeling and story and all of that. And she gave us so many of those moments in here that I just have her marked as going to, she's going to become this amazing actress. And, knock on wood, I hope nothing goes wrong with that. And, but I think everybody's kind of seeing that and everybody's kind of talking about that. So,
well, hey, in 8 or 9 years, when they decide to reboot Star Wars, they've got Leia tapped already, right?
Right. Yeah. Hopefully she kind of grows into that look, right? Because I don't
know that I would wish
Lloyd,
that. I don't know that I always wish that on anybody, but
I'm just saying, like Jake Lloyd looks nothing like.
Sure.
Yeah. I'm saying he did not. It's always different. It's always hard to predict how kids are going to grow into themselves as they get older, right?
Absolutely.
So let's talk quickly now. Let's go back to the character itself of Leia. And, one of the things, and we'll get into, wise, discerning, kind-hearted, passionate, fearless, and forthright. Those are the qualities, again, that were uttered by Obi-Wan Kenobi. But what were some of the other things for you that you would kind of throw in? And I'll go first because I just want there's some things that you see in other children, and it's so important because we're able to relate to that, whether it was our sister, whether we have daughters, whether it's our other family members or just young kids that we know. There were certain character traits that she had that as a 10-year-old have nothing to do with Star Wars and everything to do with just being an adolescent child. But I had like adventurous in there. We got to see her adventurous side, running around out there in the woods and wanting to be free, that free-spirited, free will kind of character. We would expect that from Leia, and we got some of that again when we get to Leia, Princess of Alderaan. We know there's moments in there where she's off doing her expeditions and stuff for school. Sneaky was one that I had in here when she, in that first episode where she kind of took that, when she took Lola back and she's like, I can feel that, right? And sassiness is a huge one. I mean, that's,
right.
Oh my God, it was just in droves out here. But like outspoken, strong-willed. She was somebody who was very determined. She was very compassionate, which I think was probably her most endearing quality that we would probably associate with an older Leia who leads the rebellion. But on top of that, and I'll kind of see if there's anything else you want to add. But the other cool thing I liked about this was you could tell that as a character, she was operating at a very higher intellectual level. Right? She was very smart, and it was a credit, I think, to Bale and Brea to be able to allow her to kind of be herself, right? They they weren't really hard on her all the time. They could tell that they had a special child in the fact that she was very intelligent, but then also kind of, her lineage probably plays into that as well.
Right.
But I thought they did a really good job of parenting her and allowing her to kind of be herself, especially at the very end when she's got the holster on and her mom's like, "No, I love it," Then, I don't know that I would have ever done that with my kid. I've been like, "No, take that off. You ain't gonna wear that thing." So, so I guess your thoughts. I guess any other qualities that kind of stood out for you, and then her interaction just on a quick high level, because we're going to get into this a little bit more, but with her parents there and how they kind of brought her up.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and the word discerning is a really appropriate one here in some ways, although she's a little foolhardy sometimes, I think, with over trusting of people. But, and we get to see this rebellious streak too in her.
Yeah.
Where it comes across as sass and things like that. But really, it's just this pushing of the boundaries, not necessarily in a, pushing boundaries like you do with your parents, but also just challenging the norm. Right. Mm-hmm. And trying to figure out where that right line is with right and wrong, and understanding how you fit within all of that and what you should do about it. And I think that this is a really important arc for her to see that. And that's why I was glad that she was such an important character in the series, because without all of these experiences, it would not have shaped what we saw her to become, 10 years later from here.
Yeah.
And so I think this was really pivotal to get that. And again, that just fuels a bit of that rebellious streak in her, when really it's not rebellious. It's just more, pushing back against oppression and pushing back against what she believes is wrong. And so being able to speak her mind and just being very forthright as well is, between you and Obi-Wan, you guys didn't lean me much. So just saying.
Well, and she stands up for herself too, right? And she stands up for others, probably is really kind of the lesson that's learned here, right. That she kind of comes out of it. And we'll get into her arc in just a second. Because I do want to bring in Tala. It came up more for me, I think, in the episode last night, but I was really starting to connect a lot of the dots with Tala here. So I do want to touch on that.
I think the other thing, though, is when Obi-Wan's, when he talks about her being kind-hearted, mm-hmm. it's more about this idea of you're not better than anyone else as well.
Yeah.
Because the way that she treats droids, like when her cousin was giving her, crap about, well, why do you thank a droid? That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And why do you, and there are manners, right? It's how you treat people. So why wouldn't you treat everything that's around you, whether it's living or sentient or not? It's just the way that you should treat everybody, because that's how you would prefer them to be treated. I mean, this is like 2-year-old 101 stuff, 4-year-old 101 stuff, but it's just so true though. Of so few people, sometimes, especially, like her cousin, a bit of kid of privilege, right? Mm. And you feel like you were a bit above, or way above in some cases, another class of people, but to be able to reside at the level that you want to help and support is really important for empathy and sympathy and actually being able to, pursue change.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, those life skills, right? Especially if somebody like her, like you made a good analogy there with her cousin, who's, kind of born with that proverbial silver spoon in his mouth. He sees himself as upper class, and he probably is. But Leia was brought up a different way, and I credit that, a lot of it, to her upbringing. I would give credit to the parents there for that. But at the same time, that's a good quality. It's a leadership quality that you want. Somebody who's not condescending, and someone who sees the value and the worth and understands that everybody contributes. Everybody's putting in their fair share, and it's easier to bring people along rather than trying to rule with fear, intimidation, all that stuff, right?
And willing to speak up. Yeah, I mean, but that's a really difficult thing to do for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's great. I mean, we kind of see that here in the onset. Since you broke the seal on her cousin, I want to talk about her relationship really quickly with her cousin. I mean, there's on the surface, there's really not that much here, but I did want to get your thoughts on, and we'll kind of weave this in as we can, but this idea that Leia was using the Force at any given point throughout this episode, and this moment for me feels like it could have been one of those moments. Now, I don't. Again, this is my disclaimer, because I think we've mentioned this briefly. My disclaimer being that I don't know that she was actively using the Force, right? Like, I don't know that she has any she may not have any concept of what that's like. A lot of, from what we know, that has to be trained. You may have some raw abilities there, right? So in her mind, she's just thinking, "Oh, I can already tell what this kid's going to say, or what he's thinking." But she really kind of reads him the riot act, right?
Oh yeah.
And calls him out for, being somebody, she says, you're scared of him, your father, you want him to be like you. So you repeat what he says, even though you don't really know what it means. You think being like him will make people frightened of you, but really you're the one who's scared. You've never made one decision for yourself in your entire life, and you never will. And like, it's just like pops right off of her. Right. And I get, she probably has a rocky relationship, especially if this is what he's like, and he's constantly alienating her and calling, he's the one that's sitting there telling her you're not an Organa, and that's getting to her. It's in her head. But to me, it did feel like she had this like moment of like, oh, I know exactly what's going on here, and she was reading into a lot of that stuff. The only thing that makes me think maybe that wasn't the case is because he didn't really. I mean, he had a reaction, but it wasn't like a holy cow, how could you know this type of reaction? So, I don't know, what are your thoughts there? Do you think there was any kind of touching of the Force, or is that just Leia's natural intuitiveness that we know that she has as well?
No, I think it goes beyond intuition. I think it was not like you said, it's not active because she doesn't really know what she's doing.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, once you realize you can kind of do things, you open yourself to being able to hear it more regularly, right? You talk about training, that's really what it is, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's exactly what she's doing, because I think some of those things are pretty specific. And there's no way that they've spent enough time together that she would be able to make all of those determinations, with his father and how he believes it. I mean, she could just be that sharp a tongue.
Right.
And clearly there's a lot of evidence to suggest that she is on some level, but pretty specific stuff. And I think her cousin was just in total shock. He wasn't sure what to say, because probably some things he maybe even didn't quite realize himself that were all
right, yeah.
subconsciously, right? And that's the part where clearly I think that the Force was being, used in that way, because again, sometimes we don't know what we're doing until we hear it. And you have one of those light bulb moments that you're like, no, I'm not. Oh crap. Okay. Yep. I guess I am.
Yeah.
And then whatever the reaction from that tends to be. But yeah, no, I think it is clearly touching the Force, and she's practiced at it, I think. So she's definitely, one of the things, and when you're a child, you're kind of told to be quiet and stay still.
Reserved.
And while the adults are talking. So she probably observed a lot. And it's a lot of time for her to actually practice these skills and to be able to sense things, even though she doesn't make sense of it. And then to be able to, basically practice that on her own to where she does cultivate that kind of skill. It's no different than, Anakin being really good at fixing things. Yeah. So there's a skill you still need to learn to hone that skill, but some things just come naturally, kind of like Ram, right? Ram's the same way. The way that he works through the Force, or the Force works through him, is through, engineering type of things.
Right.
That's how it talks to him. That's his song, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And so for Leia, it's very similar, that it's just through this interpersonal connection with people that she's able to discern all of these things.
Yeah. And I think we get some confirmation of that is it Bloodline? There's a moment in there in Bloodline when she's talking about, or I don't remember who's talking about it. Maybe I think it's her. She's reflecting or whatever. In what the passage that stands out is when she's talking about how Luke was really good at the physical stuff and all that, but Leia later in life realized that she could use the Force to kind of connect with people in that way, and that's what made her such an effective senator.
Right.
And so not everybody leads from the front with the lightsaber or blaster. She was putting her Force abilities and her talents, her natural talents that were not connected to the Force, for good use in trying to make a difference over as part of the Senate, and then later the Rebel Alliance and Resistance after that. So yeah, I mean, I think it was definitely a confirmation there, but I love the fact that we're seeing that here. In my opinion, I think we are kind of seeing those bits and pieces of it starting to sprout up.
I know we're going to get into Brea and Bail, but do you think that they clearly would know that the potential for her to be Force sensitive is there, and probably quite likely. But do you think that they actually knew that she was, quote unquote, showing? Or do you think that they were a bit turning a blind eye to it, or that was just more of a hush hush pillow talk type of thing when no one's listening and no one's around?
I think they had to have wondered, I do, because it's hard for us to relate to this, because
she would have had to do it to them at some point, you would think.
Well, exactly. Right? Yeah. I mean, there's
Yeah.
probably moments when she decided to do some of that stuff to get her way, even though she may not know what she was doing. But it's hard to this is such a hard for me. It's always hard to relate to this stuff because you think about like gifted and talented people or savants, right? Those people could, if you were in Star Wars, someone could argue, oh, they're that good at math because that's how they speak, use the Force. That's their song, right? Or being able to hear a tune and suddenly play it back from memory. All these really crazy gifted things that we just as normal people
Right.
cannot do. And I think from that perspective, I think it's probably easy to say that yeah, those could easily be Force powers at play in Star Wars land. But with her, the one thing that's really tricky with her is that we we really don't know how much of it is coming out from her just natural abilities versus the Force. And she could just be a character like we have. You see kids today that are very well spoken, very intelligent. They're very intuitive. Sometimes you have kids that act at that are operating at a way higher maturity level. For 95% of the day, and then there's the 5% where they're just a kid and they need to be just a kid. So I guess that's a long-winded way of saying I just don't know that her parents. I think her parents saw it at times, but with her having all these other gifts and abilities, it's probably difficult. I think it was probably blurred, unless it happened to them very specifically. Then yeah, I would say that they would suspect that.
Yeah, like you said, her lineage is as such that those lines get blurred really easily of what is just pure talent, and then what is an extension of that talent that might be in Force enhanced.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's not a bad thing if it's both and they're intertwined, right? Because that would make a lot of sense for them to be very what you're good at, you're even better at if you're able to apply the Force in some kind of way, right?
Oh yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense. And so we don't have to differentiate them, I guess, for them to work. But I like that it is who she is, though, not just her abilities, but it's who she is that the abilities enhance that, though. Yes. I think that's the really cool part.
Right. So speaking of her parents, just one other quick thing on them, and we talked a little bit about this, but for anybody that missed that episode, and because we were talking about her tonight, there's a moment in there where she says, I think it's Bria, or no, it's Bail says, "You know what she's like," and then Bria responds back with, "I know who she's like."
Mm-hmm.
And I think the question that I posed back then was whether that was she speaking about Bail or was she speaking about Padme? I think you could probably argue both. Although I don't know how much Padme and Bria knew about Padme. Maybe she learned. I don't know. But where do you think that comment was coming from?
I think it's more of a husband-wife dig.
Yeah.
Than necessarily joking about their deceased parents.
Yeah.
I think. Because I mean, I would think it would be more like Anakin rather than Padme. Although, to be honest, when you look at Brotherhood, the book from Mike Chen, you see some of these behaviors from Padme in that book. So, as an adult, so it's not. I guess there are a lot of similarities there too. But I think more she was just poking fun at Bail. So he's clearly had a bit of a maybe not a checkered past, but a rebellious past a little bit. And granted, that's kind of what he's doing here, right? The seeds of rebellion time.
Yeah.
And Brad absolutely knows that, that that's all going on.
Yeah, I'm with you too. Like growing up, I know anytime I did anything great, my parents were always quick to take credit and right. Oh, that's my side of the family, or those are my genes or my DNA. And the minute I did something wrong, they're like, "Oh, that's your child, right? That's your lineage right there. That's
a great way to put it." Yep.
And that's probably what it is, right? One of these little harmless digs at the other one for she's got a lot of spunkiness and sassiness and outspoken and strong-willed and all those character traits that we mentioned earlier on. And if those are being applied in a way that's mischievous in some way, that's definitely Bail. However, if it's ever anything good or prosperous, then of course that's me. That's Bria. That's all me. Right. It's got to be me, right? So that's kind of the better way to interpret that. There is one little parallel too that I wanted just to quickly mention about the parents. In it's as simple as at the very end of it, there is a part of me that feels like they did exactly what Kenobi said needed to happen with Luke Skywalker, and that he just needed to be a kid. Right, he was kind of sheltering him, watching him, trying to make sure that he was going to go down a certain path, that being a Jedi. And by the end of it, I think because of Leia, right, and we'll get into this too much, but because of Leia, I think he came to the realization that, okay, you know what, I probably need to back off. I'm going about this the wrong way. I've completely lost touch with the Force because of it. And really, what he needs to be, Owen, is when he's talking to Owen, he's like, he just needs to be a kid, right? And he's in good hands. Very clearly was okay with them, taking care of him, and they're very capable of taking care of them now at this point. So he kind of walks away. And in some regards, I wonder if that was very similar to what Brea and Bale were saying at the very end. And it wasn't as overt because I think he was, Bale mentions, well, we're going to make some changes and we're going to allow her to kind of dictate how she goes about being a senator. And if she wants to still be a kid, of course, she's going to be a kid. I think for Brea, it seemed like she was maybe, I wouldn't say bothered by the adventurous spirit, but I don't know that, her going off and fighting rebellion was anything that she really wanted for her daughter. But then she seems to like have accepted that. Like, okay, I'm not going to get in. I'm not going to fight against what's already in her, right? I'm going to embrace it. I'm going to encourage it. And what I mean by that is the holster when she's like, oh, I love it. Right. And, and then of course she finds that practical use of throwing Lola in there. But what do you think? Do you think there was anything there? Do you think there was a parallel in both, Kenobi as a guardian of Luke Skywalker and then the Organas as guardians of Leia, and both seeing their child as like, hey, we've got to let these kids just be kids, and the Force will take care of the rest.
Well, and I think it was, for Obi-Wan, it was very personal to him that he saw how Leia, how independent she was and how capable she was and how resourceful she was. And I think he learned that from some of that he doesn't need to have this hawkish, oversight and looming over Luke and really putting a lot of pressure on himself to be able to redeem all the things from the past. So, I mean, between Leia and Vader, that helped him move beyond some of that to be able to let go of some of those emotions and some of that desperation. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of it was akin to her, though. It was really important that she was on one that says, you know what, you can make decisions and those decisions can work out okay. And I think another level of that is Leia's willingness to trust people, that what they think is best can be the best or can be good or what's best for that situation or that person. And being able to trust Owen that what he's going to do for Luke and what Beru is going to do for Luke is going to be the right thing in the end, and that the things will play out like they are. He can be there when things do go south or when they need help, but he doesn't have to put all that pressure to just be around and hurt the family in an indirect way as well. Mm-hmm. And so, but again, I think it was all that interaction with how they saw it. And he felt the despair from Bale and Brea, of course, too, right? But at the same time, it was that Leia was able to handle some of that, and really only a couple of times, kind of fell into that, brief moment of despair. So it's inspirational to Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
And so she was a really important part of that transition in a variety of ways, not just, forgiveness and things like that.
Yeah, no, that's well said. I was definitely can see that and was kind of picking up on that as well. There's, and just speaking of that, I mean, I think she did come out of this a little bit more skeptical. Like, I don't think she was so...
She had a more realistic view.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and that was part of her character growth and some of her lessons learned. And I think we see examples of that later on. And if you're going to be the leader of a rebellion against somebody like the Galactic Empire, you can't just go around willingly trusting everyone. You got to have a high level of skepticism and all of that. And I think this is that reality for her was really given to her. It was a very character development moment for her in this part. And that kind of ties back to Tala, which we'll come back to here as well.
I think some of it though is to talk to with her parents just briefly. The conversation she had with Obi-Wan about the Empire, and Obi-Wan's response that well, the Empire's supposed to be a good thing, and Obi-Wan says, well, there are good people trying to do good things and trying to be the best they can. Mm-hmm. And again, it's those moments of coloring what she sees day in and day out, which isn't going to be the ugly truth. And we get that at the very end with Bale of what he fears that she's going to inherit and what the Empire is going to be as she gets older.
Yeah.
And so I think those are really important moments for her to see and experience firsthand, and for her to do it at 10 years old. Really, she picked up on that really quickly.
Yeah.
And so I think that was, again, other moments there that really start to shift that perspective.
So let's, I'm going to jump around here just really quickly. I want to talk about the interrogation scene that Leia went through. What's that?
That was intense.
Yeah, it was. And we had talked already. We discussed about whether or not we felt like, and this is as part of the Patreon episode that we did with our Patreon members. We threw the question out there about whether or not we felt like Reva would have gone through with pulling the trigger, if you will, hurting her in some way to get the information. I think we were probably split, if I remember correctly on that, or maybe not. I don't know. The right answer is no. Reva would have not gone through with it, but.
I'm glad we got that settled.
Yeah, I'm kidding. No, but the question is really around.
I said she would.
Going back to the question about the Force and whether or not she was using it there. I think there was a moment there where Reva she could have probed her mind, right?
I don't think she could. I think that was part of it. Kind of like Kylo with Rey.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, they didn't really show that on screen. And I guess that would be the question. As I think there was probably an opportunity or a moment there, but
they kind of did, because Leia basically was like, I could sit here all day. She Captain America'd her.
Mm-hmm.
Are we just going to stare? We're just going to stare at each other the entire time.
Yeah, sorry, I was drinking my water. So yeah, we got part of that. But do you think she was actively using the Force? And again, unconsciously, I don't mean that actively as in channeling it, but just putting up that defense.
That's a good question. That's a tough one to answer because, like you said, we don't really have any context.
Mm-hmm.
I think the easy answer is to say, yes, she was doing it indirectly as a defense mechanism, maybe. I don't, but again, you could just say that she's strong-willed, but
right.
Because think about it this way. When people are interrogated, they have different thresholds for tolerance of pain or tolerance of psychological abuse, or, we're all wired differently about what triggers us, what sets us off, what we can endure, what our training looks like to endure those things for people in special forces or military or things like that. So but for a child to do it, you would have to assume that it's probably something extra that would be able to resist a much more learned Force user like Reva, especially if Reva was trying. I think then you have to assume that Leia was using the Force at least for a little bit. And it was interesting though that Reva didn't really. Again, we didn't get comments about it though.
Yeah,
I think is the one thing, because if we could answer that question, or whether or not Reva thought that Leia was Force sensitive, then that would help us with a lot of. It would answer some of these questions, I think, clearly. Mm-hmm. And that she didn't get there is unclear if it's because she was so obsessed with what her other missions were, or if she just kept that to herself and started to put two and two together, which again would take you back to the very end of the season when, it's unclear if with Vader, whether or not she knew he had kids or who the kids were and things like that.
Oh, I've already resigned myself to the fact that she didn't know that was that she was related to Vader. But that said,
it's a huge leap to get there just out of nowhere. But given the connection with Kenobi, I imagine someone like her could get there pretty quickly.
Maybe. I think this would be an interesting thing to come up later if they did a Reva series or whatever. They could easily just say, she could have kept it to herself, like you said, and then later on, there's a moment in a future episode when she's talking about Leia, and she just quickly, very lightly mentions that, yeah, she is Force sensitive, and they could easily explain it as, okay, yeah, when she made that connection, she detected it, but didn't really do much, and maybe that was why she wasn't willing to go through with it, right?
Didn't Reva say that she was strong?
Yeah,
that she called Leia strong.
Yeah, she did.
That was the only thing that.
Yeah,
maybe.
The other thing about her abilities there, I guess, is as far as like being able to block all that stuff out. Later on, when we get to A New Hope, this scene actually, well, I wouldn't say this was a recontextualization of any sort, but like the fact that she was being interrogated at age 10, and fast forward to 9 years later when she's in that. And you see how stoic she is about being. She's scared because the interrogation droid comes in or whatever. But like, you got to think this is the first time, right? But there's probably many times after that. So by the time we get to A New Hope, this is like, what, you're going to interrogate me? Go right ahead. I've been doing this since I was 10 years old.
I don't think that's quite what was going on through her mind, but yeah.
Well, I don't think she was inviting it, But
she certainly didn't look excited about the experience.
Yeah. But you think about that line of Vader says her
Resistance to the mind probe is considerable.
Yeah. So where does that considerableness come from? And again, it's such a fine line, right? Because we don't want to step on the fact that without the Force, she still is all of these wonderful things. Yeah. At the same time, we have to acknowledge that she is Force sensitive. And to your point earlier in the analogy you made to somebody like Ram, this is probably her thing, right? This is the way she uses the Force. So we have to be really careful here. But I would say that yes, part of it is her strong will and determination, but the other part of it is I do feel like her resistance to the mind probe is a combination of her innate ability and connection to the Force, in addition to having gone through all of this training that she's gone through as a senator, as a part of the rebellion, and having gone through these experiences. If you've gone through a lot of interrogations, unfortunately, you become very desensitized to that stuff, and you're able to, lie or not give up information. Right? They put operatives through all kinds of training on this to make sure that in the event that they are ever captured, they've at least got some of these basic core skills in them to kind of prevent them from giving up information outside of medical inducing stuff.
And she becomes a politician, and they can't be trusted for all of those reasons, right there.
Right, exactly. But you get what I'm saying. Like, so I think I guess the only comment really here, or the analogy, is just the fact that we see her doing this, having gone through this, unfortunately, at a very young age. But I think that makes her a very strong person. It certainly adds to that strong-willedness that we see her display in A New Hope when she is being interrogated there.
Yeah, her determination and willpower, I think alone is kind of what you're referencing, right? Of when you can psych yourself up and be like resistant and push, and then how long can you hold on to all of that intensity, especially when you're getting pumped full of drugs or something like that, or if someone else is doing something maybe force induced on you, or that's atypical for interrogation type of things. But that willpower is a considerable component of all of that, because with all the Force power in the world, unless you are willfully trying to do it and you have practiced it a bit, it doesn't really account for much. So I think, again, it's not that I don't think it'd be short selling to say she would use the Force or that's part of it, but I think you're right. Her individuality and all of that, and her independence of that, I think is vital for any of the other things to be possible, especially using the Force in extreme moments of stress like that as well. So again, as a 10-year-old, maybe not in this case, because clearly she was pretty desperate and not able to do anything herself. But later on, clearly she had developed some experience in all of this that really helped her out later on.
Yeah,
especially on the Death Star. But I imagine numerous other times too, because she's like deadpanned in the books, and no one can read her, but she can read other people.
Right. So on that, on the topic of Reva and her relationship with Reva, how much do you think Leia's personality and spirit affected Reva by the end? And this, it may be nothing, and that's fine. You can just say nothing, and we'll move on. But I do wonder, because they went through that interrogation thing, and because she kind of saw, I don't want to make assumptions here. Do you think Reva ever saw herself in Leia? Right, we've already talked about the Force connection piece there, whether or not maybe she saw that, maybe she felt it. Who knows? That's really not relevant. But she did spend some time with Leia, and she's got this child who's very strong-willed. There's got to be moments in there where Reva was comparing her life to Leia, or do you think there was ever any moment where she saw herself in Leia, or Leia in her, and then kind of at the very end, when she kind of comes back to the light? Do you think there was ever any part of Leia that influenced her, in addition to everything else that happened? Do you think there was anything that Leia did or said that influenced her to allow her to kind of come back to the light?
I don't know if it's anything she did or said, but I think definitely the experience with Leia helped form some cracks. And I think some of it was more of her own actions about what she was having to willfully do on her being Reva in this case.
Yeah.
The decisions that she was going to have to make and live with because of the defiance of someone else, I think were the ones that help expose those insecurities and those some of that trauma from what Anakin / Vader did, many years ago, 10 years ago, into what she was worried might happen again, or what she was unable to, or what she would be unable to, follow through on her mission of what she was trying to do. And so again, I think it started to turn that self-reflection and that self-doubt amped it up from while we was already sitting there. But now she's got this kid that probably reminds her a little bit in that way, especially when she was struggling, and she's going to be the one to do it to her. And so Leia's resistance and her, Leia telling her she doesn't have to do this, right? And so some of those things eat away at you. So are they the difference between making a better decision with Luke and not? I don't think so, but I think they're definitely contributors to forming some of the cracks and putting a little bit of stress on what was already a pretty stressed shell for Reva.
Yeah, no, I like that, and I'm with you 100%. Like, I don't feel there was a direct influence in that regard, but to your point, I think somebody like Leia, because who she is, and this is where I would give credit to Leia. I think because of who she is, she had an impact on Reva at the end, right? Whether it was indirectly or directly or not.
Right.
So, okay, so let's move over to her relationship now. Let's talk about Tala. Tala is a very interesting one, and the more I've thought about this, the more I really believe that of all the people, maybe next to Kenobi, apart from Kenobi, of course, she really had an impact. Tala had a very huge impact on Leia. Because you think about somebody who's 10 years old, and we don't have any reason to suspect that prior to this, she was in any kind of these situations, ever, right? So this is her first real world experience going out there and feeling, the danger to the degree that she did, right? I mean, she had different people. She was captured twice. It wasn't just once. And there were people threatening her life. She was almost tortured at one point. She saw the horrific people she saw some horrific scenes of people dying, stormtroopers. She was in the middle of combat. There's probably some PTSD that's going to be as a result of this, right? So all of this is very traumatic, in my opinion, as for somebody who's only 10 years old. And so you take all of that and you see somebody like Tala and somebody like Kenobi, and they are kind of like the shining lights, and they're the beacons of hope, right? They're the people that eventually she would trust in, especially with Kenobi. She eventually came around him. But for Tala, when she looks at Tala, like, she almost sees her as like, wow, that's what I want to be. Like, here's a woman who, a fellow woman, right? Number
Very
one.
inspirational, yeah.
Yeah, inspirational. And not only is she's doing all these horrible things, but at the core of it, she's doing it for all the good reasons. She's out there saving other children and saving other people and putting her life at risk every single day because she's continued to be a part of the Galactic Empire that would willfully just kill her immediately if they found out that she was a traitor. And she didn't defect, right? She's decided to stay on that side because she felt she could do more help there by staying with the Empire. And so you gotta think that Leia sees Tala as like, wow, this is who I want to be when I grow up. And I think there are certain parts of it, whether it's just the selflessness of it. I mean, she gave the ultimate sacrifice of her life, right? With blowing herself up and Ned there with the thermal detonator. But seeing that has got to be I wouldn't say it's inspirational, but it is definitely life-changing to know that there's somebody out there. And you think about where Leia is and somebody like a Cassian Andor and how they put their lives out there for the galaxy, a galaxy of people they don't even know. Right, somewhere that had to spark, and I get her parents are senators, and they're kind of doing that on the different side, but this is like war, and to me, it feels like this was a huge influence for her. And I think there's certain aspects and character traits of Tala that we definitely see in Leia later on. Maybe not now. I think the only one we get is just the holster, maybe the aesthetic that we saw her in at the very end of the episode, where she kind of had her gloves and she had the boots, and that to me it felt like, okay, she's modeling that after Tala in some way. But anyways, your thoughts on their relationship and how much inspiration Leia drew from Tala and her actions and her personality.
I think there were a couple of key points. I think one, she learned that the galaxy and the decisions that people make and the lines that they draw, it's a messy proposition. There is nothing that's going to make sense all of the time, and things are just going to be messy. I think the other part is I think she sees if someone like Tala can make a decision based on and I know Leia didn't hear the story directly that Tala told Obi-Wan, but at the same time, I think Leia sees enough of it that says, here's a person who made a different decision. She can't be alone. There are others who are like that. There are good, it's like there is still good in him, right?
Yeah.
Like the opportunity for people to make a different decision, given the opportunity to do it and the willingness to do it, and the strength and the support to do it, there are a lot of people like that. And we just have to believe that they exist, and we have to believe in them when we see it. And we have to take risks. We have to take calculated risks. Sometimes we have to take a little, maybe a little riskier risks than we would have expected or would prefer to. But I think those things she started to get, she started to see this color in the galaxy of how that all works, and that it doesn't, it's going to come from the craziest people. Haja, right? I mean,
yeah.
Again, a thief and someone, running scams on the streets, but still get with a kind of a heart of gold, with a little coin in his pocket. Not a bad thing, but I mean, she sees these people that have the ability, and that's going to pay huge dividends when they're going and trying to find people. Because imagine how difficult it is, for Bale and them to approach someone about any kind of rebellion against the Empire, anybody directly defying Vader, directly defying the Emperor. So these are the building blocks for Leia that she sees it firsthand in the field, with like you had pointed out, with the traumatic events of being in a firefight and people that you care for dying, and that loss. She's learning at all a young age, and it all just continues to build. And Tala was such an inspiration because she embodied all of that, where she could get rid of her entire old life for what she thought was right, not because she had a change of opinion, but because she was more informed.
Yeah.
And then she was willing to give her life, much in the same vein as Andor does several years later, for a galaxy of people they don't know. All because they believe that it's right and it's the just thing to do, and they have faith in other people that they will keep that light burning at the end of the day.
Yeah, and the other, I don't know if this is the right thing to say, to be honest, but there is something hopeful about people like Tala and somebody like Holdo, right? And Holdo gave her life as well. We brought up Cassie and Andor. But all of the, you figure somebody like Tala, of course, her parents, Kenobi, and a number of other situations that happened. There were some episodes that we had in Rebels as well. So that by the time we get to A New Hope, right, she is the embodiment of hope. And I know that story is kind of really about Luke, but it's just weird. It's got both. It's got another meaning here a lot lately. But for Leia, she's so hopeful, and it goes back to that quote about, hope is like the sun. If you only believe it when you see it, you'll never make it through the night. Right. And I feel like Tala particularly was somebody that did help give her hope and allowed her to understand the meaning of hope and how powerful it is to do, like you said, to have make those types of sacrifices and know that people are thinking, wow, there are people out there that are going to put their life out there for me who they don't even know. I think that was like you said, it's very inspirational. And I think that they definitely had a play in her character development much later on in life. So,
and if you think about how Jen Erso put it, we'll take the next chance, and then we'll take the next chance until all of the chances are spent. Mm-hmm. It's that same type of approach. And that's how you live in a rebellion. You live moment to moment. And you have to understand that's reality in these cases, that it's more often than not, people aren't going to make it to see the end of it.
Yep. Okay, so we'll kind of shift now to her relationship with Kenobi and some of the experiences there. I mean, of course, they spent a lot of time together. There was a lot of great moments, everything from, there were some funny moments, especially where, she was ad-libbing about being her daughter or his daughter, and after he told her not to say a single word, she just goes right into this whole story that she just makes up, real quick-witted and able to make that story up. And you got to.
That's why I laughed when he called her discerning, because I was like, really? Because I remember where you were not too thrilled when she just jumped into some story with some stranger with an Imperial flag on the back of his truck that he hand painted.
Right. Yeah, the guy was a zealot, man. That's what's known as a zealot. But yeah, I mean, we had some really great moments in there. And I think one of the coolest things, and we won't talk about the hand moment because I think we spent a lot of time, at least I did anyways, when we talked about it during our favorite moments of Kenobi. This was my favorite moment when she reaches over and grabs Kenobi and shows her compassion and is kind of there for Kenobi as a small child when he needs her as an adult, which is crazy maturity that she's showing there. But she goes to that, but where she started was, and this is kind of a funny moment where she says, "You're old. So are you sure you even know what you're doing?" Right? When she's like, we're talking
grandfather,
to Kenobi.
maybe.
Yeah, grandfather, maybe. I mean, she's just like taking jabs at this guy. There's all kinds of ageism that's going on here, some snarkiness coming off of her.
Ageism.
But yeah, I mean, for her to come around to that and being able to trust somebody like Kenobi, I think that's part of what you were talking about, where, yeah, at the very beginning, she's willing to trust just about everybody except this dude because he doesn't look anything like a Jedi, right?
Well, and she knows that he's holding something back too. I think that was part of it.
Yeah.
I
wonder if that's, yeah, no, that's a good point. I wonder if she could feel that, right? I mean,
oh, absolutely.
Going back to the Force part of it, right? She may not know what's going on there, but she may feel or sense that emptiness that he has. Like, he's not a whole. He's not complete in some way. And and yet Dad thinks this is the guy that, can get the job done. I'm not seeing it. I'm not feeling it.
Right.
And thankfully, of course, the story that all kind of comes around, and she certainly, puts her trust into him. And I think that was in the moment for me, just to kind of go back to that moment. That was the moment where she signaled, I trust you and everything's going to be okay. We're going to get to this all, together, which is what I think Kenobi needed, right? He needed somebody to believe in him again because he really didn't believe in himself. And, he had his doubts. He was making mistakes. All the reasons that we've talked about in that episode, but Leia was kind of the one that really picked him up, got him back on his horse, if you will.
And again, it's just chipping away at that demeanor and just by being herself. Mm-hmm. But again, you're right. It's funny. I'm sitting here listening to you talk about some of these scenes and your interpretation. And, I keep, Leia's this person who just leads by, but from the front, much like her parents. Yeah. Well, and her mom, in a lot of ways too. Yeah. Padme was very much like that. Right. And just jump out there and do it. And it just reminded me that, if you're not going to do it, then I'll do it. Kind of like when she tells, to get this walking carpet out of her way, when she talks to Chewbacca and after they rescue her from the detention level and all of that stuff, right?
Or Utini's moment. Remember Utini brought up about somebody get me a ladder.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like just out of nowhere, this child steps forward and says, I will do this. I'm putting you guys on my shoulders and I'll get us through this part, right? Just, I need something here.
Exactly. Yep. And so, I mean, yeah, but again, it's that showing of those leadership qualities while you also have compassion, but your willingness to get your hands dirty, your willingness to do it definitely helps Obi-Wan pull himself out of all of this and see what's possible. And really, people like Leia inspire other people to be better and inspire you to do things to, to protect them, but also be part of that cause with them. And so Leia just being herself in some ways. And again, she learned a lot at the same time and throughout all these experiences, but just just that presence, I think, and having all of that gamut of emotions and that type of connection, that support. And of course, when you go through hell with each other, you tend to come out the other side with a very different relationship. Mm-hmm. And they had some pretty difficult times there, but yeah.
What about another funny moment for me was, and I think we talked about this, and you probably can relate to this one, but when they're in the market and he's buying her the green hood, and I went back and watched the scene again for the show because he's like,
it's a total parent moment. I just did this the other day.
Yeah, it's a total parent moment. Wow. He's trying to buy her a hood. He's in a hurry. He's already told her, you don't look at anybody, don't trust anyone, whatever. I mean, he's like laying down the law, like, oh, this is, I'm the parent here. I know what's right. I know what's wrong. And then he sees her with the gloves and he's like, no, we're not getting those. And she just all she does is stare at him. And for a second I thought, I wonder if she used the Force to influence. Was like, no, there's no way she would have done that. But
that would have been something.
That would have been something, right? But I think as any parent would know, if a child, and maybe one that, you're sweet on as a father-daughter kind of thing, all they have to do is stare at you and give you the eye or give you that look. And what are you going to do? You're going to turn around and get the gloves. And that's exactly what he does, which I thought was a really sweet moment that he was just like, okay, fine, we'll get the gloves. And the gloves is what he says, I think is a line there. So
right.
He says, you don't need those is what he tells her. And then she puts them on and looks at him. Then he turns away and goes, and the gloves. Like, dang it. I'm just going to get them. Right.
Yeah. Perfect parenting moment when you just want to appease the kid. Part of it just like, I just want to get out of here and I don't want to argue. Can we just do this and go, please? It's like trying to get everyone out of the house. Yeah. Like, what do I have to do to get you in this car? What do I have to do to get you out of this house? What do I have to do to get out of this damn store so we can go to the next thing, right?
Yep.
And it's just part of having a kid around.
Okay, well, let's talk about finding herself. And this is, I know I said I was going to tease it up, and then I ended up talking about it. I think in I don't know what episode it was. So, but I did want to talk about her character arc because when you look at Leia again, going back to the very beginning about expectations, this is not at all what I was expecting. Like
Right.
even if we would have gotten like if I was expecting we would get Leia and she again would be there as a MacGuffin. Had we just gotten a couple of lines from her, or she was in episodes and just again maybe had some funny moments and all that, that would have been really cool. Like I wasn't expecting that. But to get a story arc from her, where at the very beginning of the episode, she's constantly being told that she's not an Organa. She has to have her dad tell her that. She still looks like she's got some doubt. I mean, she feels better because dad says that she is, but I never would have thought that Leia Organa would have had these feelings. And maybe that's ignorance on my part because I'm not an adopted child, right? And I don't know what that's like. But because she was brought in at such an early age, I would have thought that probably would have not been,
Been more integrated,
prevalent.
and
Yeah.
it would have been less of a thing. Yeah.
Right. So we see her at that part. Okay. That's kind of who she is. And then not only that, she's being asked to be a senator. She's got mom telling her, dad's in the business, and there's probably it's natural that that's where she's going to have to go, and she's bucking against it. Like she really doesn't want it. She talks about the stuffy uniforms and boring meetings, and it's just not what she wants. And her dad's trying to spin this like the best way a parent could spin something that is probably not the best thing, but you say, oh, well, you would be perfect for it then, right? Because you don't like it, and maybe there's some truth in that. But she's got that.
Meanwhile, she's like, "This is the dumbest thing you've ever said to me."
Right? This is not going to help. But she's got this. They want her to go into this lineage and this trade, and she doesn't want to at all. Like this is not what she wants to do. And then, to go from that to the very end where she accepts that she's an Organa, and I'll let you kind of speak to that whole I don't need to know part of it. And then also, accepting that, okay, she is going to become a senator. And she's going to do it her way, right? There's what was it? There's some changes or things that we need to, I forget the line, but basically
Yeah.
we're going to make some changes. And he's like, well, let's do it together kind of thing. So for her to go through that and all of this kind of happens as a result of all of the events that she went through. Right? She went through all these things and met all these different people and saw people like Tala and Kenobi that inspired her and made her feel like, okay, maybe the front lines isn't for me, but if there's something I can do, if I can make a difference as a senator and really kind of change the world, then maybe that's exactly what I want to do. Right? It's given her new purpose. So
Yeah, and her perspective is still going to be fairly narrow, but it's probably broader than many kids her age. Because she's been. Her mother's the queen, right? So that's another more political type of position in some ways, and what they do day in and day out in their palace and whatever they have to, what she's subjected to, are just all part of those events. But I think again, it's one of those things of what are the ways you can contribute and be the most effective. And Leia is seeing and getting that confidence in herself to be able to say, this is what I can do. Yes, I could probably go learn to shoot. I could go, maybe fight a war. But she's starting to understand that she's really good at reading people. She wants to help people. So I think she wants to be close enough to, that humanitarian side of things as well. But also, how do I make change? How do I make lasting change? And for better or worse, right now, that opportunity is doing what like her dad does. And I think she finally recognizes that. And Obi-Wan has a instrumental, play in that when she tells her that, your dad's one of the good ones.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one trying to do things, but there's not enough like him effectively.
Right.
And so she knows that you still need numbers on some level. And I think she's starting to learn and understand some of that, and to where that makes a lot more sense. And so lean into your strengths, adjust and learn, learn from some of your weaknesses and develop some of those. But, you have an opportunity here to do something. So lean into some of that. And she's got a great teacher. I mean, to do that with her family, it's not just her dad, it's her mother too, right?
Yeah.
We know that her mother's a significant influencer, and is not just all about Bale because he's a senator, but their influence in the galaxy is substantial. And so she has two of the best teachers, and she has a bunch of gifts. and talents that, again, this is why she's the powerhouse that she is for the next, 50 or 60 years, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, her coming around there at the very end is pretty significant, and it's pretty special too. Just given that, again, like we said, it was, because of Leia and Luke, but mostly because of Leia, Kenobi is able to kind of find himself, and it's because of Kenobi and because of people like Tala and maybe even Reva and a lot of the other people that she interacted with in the series. Really, this was kind of a really defining period in her life. Like, I think this is really what gets her set on this course of who she is and what she will eventually become. Going back to the Leia audiobook, which Chris had just mentioned too. So yeah, this is it was really unexpected to get all that from her. There were all the qualities that I think we've kind of touched on them, but he says that for her mother, wise, discerning, and kind-hearted, and we saw all of that. I mean, we didn't talk about the the moment in there. It's very subtle, but it's so poignant where, when they're on the ship and they're getting bombarded and she's going around with Lola to all the kids and just trying to get their mind off of what's going on, right? I mean, what kid does that? You know what I mean? Like, what kid at that level is operating on that maturity level and understanding that, okay, I can't do anything about the bombardment. I can't fly the ship. I can't do anything else. But what I can do is go around and put people at ease, or at least take their mind off of the horrors that are happening right now, right?
Control what's in your sphere of control, yeah.
Exactly. The idea that we could just get blown to smithereens right here in the middle of space. I'm going to help, remove that thought from everybody by doing it.
Kind of reminds me of Leia in Last Jedi, actually, when they're on the shuttle and Poe is freaking out because they've abandoned ship, and he was drugged or whatever, or he was stunned, right? And she calls him over and was like, sit down, chill out, that type of thing. It just dawned on me that it was a very similar moment.
Yeah. And then passionate, fearless, and forthright, as being traits from her father, from Anakin. That fearless one, the interrogation scene, right? She tells her, she screams at Reva, "I'm not afraid of you." Right. And there's a part of me that feels like she probably is, but she wasn't going to show it. And if there's anything that we know of Leia Organa, is that she is absolutely fearless. Right? There's clear instances in all of.
You need any examples of that? Go read some of the comic books and read the books, because I mean, goodness gracious,
yeah,
that is one not only headstrong character, but one of full of confidence and willing to do what needs to be done to get the job done.
Yeah,
incredible character in some of those books.
And just to quickly cite things that happen in the movies, in A New Hope, she said someone's got to save our butts or whatever, and she takes
Skins,
gets them out of there. She's going head up against those folks. Later on in Empire, there's plenty of examples in there. We didn't talk about this either, but like in Empire, she's a leader and she sticks around until like the very last shuttle. Like, she's more focused on getting everybody else out. And they have to like drag her out of there. Like, you have to go, Princess. You have to go. You cannot stay back anymore. You're putting yourself at risk and danger, and we need you, right? You've already hit your threshold.
Well, if Han wasn't there, she probably would have gone down with the ship. Figuratively.
Yeah, no, really, for sure. So yeah, and then, facing Jabba, going into Jabba's palace in Return of the Jedi, attacking Jabba in the way that she did, and all that. I mean, there's just clear examples, and that's just the first 3 movies, right? We've got 3 more, or at least 2 more after that. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely a character trait that comes from her, and it comes from, I would say, from Padme as well. But
yeah, Padme has a lot of that forthrightness and fearlessness as well. Yeah. And that's why her and Anakin were a bit of kind of maybe not fire and ice, but they definitely had conflicts in personality, because they were similar in some ways. A different approach, but that's also why they had some disconnects on some things, especially when it came to politics, because, I mean, they both had their own, they kind of believed the same thing, but from a very different way of getting there.
Yeah, I wouldn't say fire. I'd say fire and like gunpowder are those 2.
Well, yeah, that's something. That's an explosion. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, they kind of did blow up the whole order there. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, well done.
Silk and Steel. Look at that. Gary comes in. I can see that. Let's see what else we got. I want to close on a. Hopefully you read this speculation question.
I did, yeah.
Okay, cool. Because I don't know how you feel about this one, but anything before we get to that,
It was an interesting question.
Anything else that you want to talk about with Leia that we didn't cover specifically around her character? Or, I think we've done a pretty good job of kind of analyzing some of the origin. I mean, in a sense, that's essentially what it was. It's kind of almost an origin story. But what? Anything else?
No, I like where she ended up with this, just super confident, but also, while she's dressing herself at the end, I know that kind of seems a bit cliche.
Yeah.
But again, it's that self-motivation and that decision to get involved and to do things yourself and to do them your way and take responsibility for not only your actions, but what you want to happen as a result of what is going on and what you want to contribute to it. And so I think that was the main key, takeaway here, is that she now understands this accountability that at the very beginning of the series, we had, it's unclear if she had any kind of, I don't know. She definitely didn't have any accountability, because she would run off anytime she, had something she didn't want to do. She would run from it.
Mm-hmm.
And now she's like, okay, well, this is what we got to do, and I got to keep the long game in mind, not just what my own personal needs are here in the short term.
Yeah.
So I think that was a pivotal moment for her changing. I think it was really well done, and you have to kind of take a step back to see all of those moments to really grasp how all that fit together. But really, really well done. They did a great job with this character, get beyond expectations. I think of either one of us what we thought was possible with Leia, especially with a child actor. So super excited with how this all worked out.
All right, so the speculation question that I have for you.
This is good. Yeah.
Do you think we'll see Leia in anything more? I'm kidding. No, that's not the question. The question is, what would Leia's life had been like had she been sent to live with Owen and Beru instead, and not as the chosen one, right? So still assuming that Luke is the chosen one, had they decided to send Luke over to Bria and Bail, and she grew up with Owen and Beru?
That's a hard one. That's a really hard one, because there are so many different ways you could take it.
Mm-hmm.
Because Owen would have been a really hard worker, right? And so would she have turned out like Owen? I guess is what I kept rolling around in my head was, man, if Owen got into that and she was actually able to like get on board, because again, it's where do you learn the rebellious stuff? You don't necessarily just have it. I mean, we do as a part of growing up, as our bodies change and our chemistry changes, but it's not like we're natively rebellious. And so how would that have played out? But again, if you just take it at face value, then man, she would have been down at Tashi Station and down throwing back, shots at the cantina, and
yeah,
who knows what that kid would have gotten into trouble with out there if she would have really had to push back on what kind of life she was doing. But then again, the other side is that she would have been an extremely hard worker, and you have to wonder about, would she be more akin to Beru? Because it's not just Owen, it's Beru, right? And Beru has this very quiet demeanor, but also one that has a lot of drive behind it that we are just now starting to understand better and look at it. She's not just in the kitchen, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she definitely has a thing. The family is important to her, but she's also not bound to everything. And her and Owen don't necessarily agree. So it still would have been a really interesting dichotomy of that difference between the parents. And it seems like it's more stark with the Lars family than it is with the Organas. And so that would have been really interesting to sit there and kind of map out what that would have looked like if she would have started taking pieces of both of them.
Yeah.
But I'll stop there, because you probably got I've got the hat back here if I need to get it.
No, you don't need to get the hat.
Okay,
In fact, Richard just kind of chimed in with what I was thinking. He said maybe like Rey. And the reason I went there was only because there were moments in the Rise of Skywalker, and certainly I guess in the Last Jedi, at the very end of the Last Jedi, I don't. Again, you know me. I can read a lot into something I can read a lot into nothing, right? But when I look at like the Last Jedi and the Rise of Skywalker, there are moments there when Leia is with Rey, and she's almost looking at her as like, this is a very splitting image of myself. I can see a lot of myself in Rey. Yeah. And I don't want to turn this into a character comparison between Rey and Leia, but kind of what Richard was saying here. I just wonder if because she grew up on Tatooine, she grew up on Jakku. I mean, she's got the difference being obviously she's got a family here. I just wonder if there wouldn't be more characteristics of somebody like Rey that we would have, and she wouldn't be following necessarily a path of like, you know, diplomacy or leadership, because I don't know that those opportunities would have presented themselves. I think she would have been probably in the same situation that maybe she would have been in the same situation that Luke was in, where it's farm first, and they've got to tend to the farm. There's nobody else that's out there. They're getting older, that kind of thing, and so that I think that would have sidelined her in some ways. But then I just wonder, like, how would she have gotten off? Because I mean, the whole story flips, and I don't. Again, this is a question we could really spend a whole lot of time on, but the whole story flips, because now you've got Kenobi and reaching out to, or Luke reaching out to Kenobi, maybe in that regard. Who knows? So, but yeah, and we don't necessarily come up with a good answer here tonight. I kind of threw this out there also for people just to kind of think about what that influence of somebody like Owen and Beru would have. Now, I will say this: as far as with Beru, in the Queen's books that have come out recently by E.K. Johnson, we know that she was out there trying to like she was getting into the science of like how to remove the detonators and slaves. And so that I wonder if that's where she would have gone, if she would have been more influenced by somebody like Beru in that regard, and maybe done something with like the slavery, trying to end slavery on Tatooine, or end slavery as a whole. Again, the big restriction is the fact that she's growing up on Tatooine. Not really, well, I say it's not really the hub of the galaxy, and yet everything seems to go through Tatooine.
The hub of scum and villainy, at the very least.
Yeah. But I wonder if that's a path that she would have gone down in some way, and being able to apply her innate skills as well as her ability in the Force to help do something at a ground roots or grassroots level around slavery. Beyond that,
well, and again,
what else
it kind of starts to maybe mimic more Anakin's journey too when he was a kid. It might look a little bit more like that, because he's a very empathetic, individual when he wants to be.
Yeah.
And he can sense some of that stuff. But I think one thing is very clear, though. She would have been the one to go negotiate with the Jawas. Without doubt. I think that's definitely what her job would have been.
Yeah. I can see that.
Owen would have been like, I'm not messing with those things. You go figure it out.
I think she would have been a doomsday planner like her mom, too, or for Aunt Beru.
I think that would be a pretty dangerous combination, yeah, because as she got older, I agree with you, Mom. We got to do some stuff around here.
Right. You got to tighten up the old the perimeter of the fence around here on the ranch.
That's right.
Well, I don't know. Think about it, you guys. Let me know let us know what you guys think of how that would have changed. And again, it's a slippery slope, because you can just start going down a path of, well, what about this and what about that, and this changes this and that. This is that. What did we do the What If series? What did we call that?
What If?
Was it okay? Well, this is before before the Marvel series had come out. We wanted to do that, and we did one episode, and it just turned into oh Lord, it was a rabbit hole of speculation. So
it was wonderful.
All right,
I still have the artwork for it.
Somebody more intelligent has just chimed in. That's Jeff. He says, if she grew up on Tatooine, she'd probably still end up killing Jabba just because she'd be sick of him. Oh, that's a good point. Maybe even take over the criminal enterprise. Oh,
yeah. What if she ended up like a Kira?
Yeah, taken to a life of crime.
Well, again, a life of opportunity and having more than what you have, and what shapes those opinions. But again, Owen Beru are good people, and Kira didn't have that. But again, you see that spirit, though, right? That's the part that always makes you question about whether or not it would have been a good child, or she would have grown up in the right way, or if she would have been resourceful in maybe ways that, she's boosting land speeders or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what, Albert? If people want to give us their opinions, they can find us in a lot of different ways. They can find us at cantinacast.com/Discord and come talk to us in the Discord channel, as well as all of our social media. And if you'd like to email us, we're at hello there at the Cantinacast, at cantinacast.com.
Just at Cantinacast.
Just at Cantinacast. Hello there at cantinacast.com. There we go.
Cool. Well, thank you for that. Yeah, I think we'll leave it there. We've got, and this is really kind of it's a companion show to all the other breakdowns that we did, but we felt like it was necessary to kind of put a spotlight on Leia, and maybe we'll do more of these later down the road. Who knows? With all of the talk about potential characters coming back now with the de-aging and what do you call it, the face stuff and what the I can't think of the name. But yeah, I mean, there's opportunities here now for
deep fake and
deep
respeecher and everything else.
Right. I mean, the technology's there. It's getting better, and who knows? We may see more Leia stories down the road, and maybe be able to kind of peel back some more additional layers there that we didn't know it existed. Okay. I guess anything else before we get out of here? You want to do some shout outs?
Yeah, let's do some shout outs. Jonathan, Rob, Sky, Katya, Leland, Richard, Steph, J-Dubs, Hard Counter, Chef Chris, welcome back. Gary Smith, even though you're late, Gary, we love that you show up and you hang around. So we appreciate that. Jorge, and then Aaron Gadet. That appears to be a new name, so welcome, Aaron.
Aaron. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Aaron. I just saw that.
Over on the Facebooks, I believe. Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
So, and then, so be on the lookout for our interview with Adam Christopher. Again, we record it tomorrow, but that will be out here in a few days. Patreon members, look for that over the weekend. You will have it in your feed soon enough. We're not doing a video or live stream with that, but so just to set expectations there.
Yeah, it'll be audio only on that one.
Right.
So cool. All right. Well, that's going to do it. Again, we've got that show come up. We'll have at least 2 more next week for you as well, but more on that later. And I've gotten you credits with everybody's names in them. So you'll get to see your name on here if you're watching the live stream, if you're a Patreon member. Any final words before we get out of here?
Oh, thanks, everyone.
All right. We'll see you soon.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.